Okay, we are back live again. Again, I apologize. Please begin where you left off.
Okay, you want me to dive in or do we want to start from the beginning?
No, right where you were.
All right, let me pop back over here. Yeah, sorry, folks. All right. So I was I was letting the cat out of the bag about my dissertation findings. We also found that non-adult learners. So while we were looking out for the adult learner over 25 population, my dissertation study actually showed that non-adult learners were disproportionately affected by progress to graduation issues because of these course material costs. This means that students under the age of 25 are significantly more likely to experience these issues than are students over the age of 25. And to me, this makes sense because once you're 25 and you've reached that, you've had a few opportunities to learn how to budget, how to make decisions based on the courses that you're taking. And so this is troublesome that both low-income populations and students under the age of 25 are disproportionately experiencing these issues. So we also know that students are largely funding these purchases with cash and personal savings, followed secondly by student loans. In fact, the Student Public Interest Research Group, which puts out a number of very poignant reports, they report that nationwide each year, $3 billion of federal student aid goes to pay for textbooks. Not $3 billion of federal student aid going for college. This is for textbooks alone. So when it comes to equity, we can't really fool ourselves by thinking that the programs that we're buying into that allow students to wrap up these costs with their financial aid and putting them into tuition, or the ways that we're able to put these costs onto financial aid, honestly, we can't really say that we're helping these students in the long run because we're just deferring these amounts of debt, and not only deferring them, but adding to them because of the interest that's involved. Open educational resources can help eliminate these inequities. I want to talk a little bit about what they are, how you can recognize them. I'll show a few different places that are really easy to find them and discover them, and then I'll pass it to Dr. Collier. By definition, open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research materials that are either in the public domain or they're licensed in a manner that allows their free availability and perpetual permission to engage in those 5R activities you see there on the slide. And I'll talk about what those are in a second. So the biggest misconception about OER is that if it's free, it's open. Like I found it on the internet. So it must be open. But OER has everything to do with permissions and not necessarily to do with the fact that it's free. Creators of OER apply a different license to them. So we're used to seeing the copyright license, the single C with a circle around it. Creative Commons materials are licensed with the Creative Commons license, so a double C with a circle around it. Basically, those creators have to apply this license to legally enforce the sharing of that work. And I don't know if you're aware, but copyright in the United States, as well as throughout the world, it's automatic as soon as something is fixed in tangible form. So you write your idea down on a napkin, you put it in an audio file on your phone, you make a PowerPoint that's stored on your hard drive, it's automatically copywritten. So unless you apply a license like the Creative Commons license that legally enforces that sharing, then it is copywritten and restricted. So that's how people are creating OER, and entire textbooks, course materials, ancillaries have all been created over now the past 2 decades that are all openly licensed. So I want to just dig into a few things about the public domain and then show you what those licenses look like so you can recognize OER when you see it. There's 2 ways that things enter the public domain, basically. So first is that they were published before 1924, or as we entered 2021, 1925. And those things are typically indicated by what's called the public domain mark. That's the image on the top here. So it's not always that, but people who are working in museums and archives, they will put this stamp on something to indicate that, yes, this is part of the public domain. The other way is that the creator will choose to dedicate that work to the worldwide public domain. And that's the symbol you see on the bottom, the CC0 symbol. So basically people are saying, I've made this, take it, use it. You can credit me if you want, but it's not necessarily something that I'm requiring. So again, it's everything to do with permissions and not necessarily what you see on the internet that's available for free. One of my favorite sources for public domain materials is Project Gutenberg at gutenberg.org. So here you can find over 60,000 free ebooks in different formats, from Kindle to PDF to high-res, EPUBs, everything here. You know, it's free. There's no registration. For instance, we're entering Halloween season, right? So here you can find the original works of Dracula. You can find Frankenstein. You can find the works of Edgar Allan Poe, or from the German camp, you can find Kafka's Metamorphosis. All of these books are freely available here in multiple formats. So this is one example of where you can find public domain materials. So our English folks, history folks, there's a lot here. As you hunt for OER, the other side of it are those Creative Commons licenses I mentioned. There's 6 of them in total, but they all comprise these 4 elements. The first one with the person in the circle is the CC BY or attribution element. This is on every single Creative Commons work. And basically it means that when you use it, you just have to credit the creator of that. So that's another misconception, is that when people create OER, they don't receive credit. They're doing it for free and giving it away. Well, no differently than copyrighted works, creators of OER also receive credit. It's part of that license. And all of this works within copyright. It's not in violation. It's not over it. This is wholly within the scope of copyright. So the CC BY element, that is the most open. Use it however you want. Just credit the source. The second symbol you see there, the equals, is a no derivatives or ND, which indicates cases where the creator says, yeah, you can use this, you just can't change it. The third, share alike, means that you can use it, you can change it, but anything that you create out of it needs to also be assigned the share alike license. The final one is non-commercial, meaning that you can use this, just not for commercial purposes, which for all of us in this room right now, our purposes are pretty much non-commercial anyway. So these are the 4 Creative Commons license elements. And together, they make these 6 licenses. So ultimately, the way that you recognize OER is by seeing one of these licenses. And just as copyright we talked about is this idea of all rights reserved, Creative Commons licensed materials are some rights reserved. You as the creator decide which rights you want to reserve and how that work is going to be reused. So for something to be truly open, it allows you the 5 R permissions. These permissions were coined by a mentor of mine, David Wiley, and I want to walk through them because this is what makes OER so powerful for us as educators. To retain something means that you can download it, you can duplicate it, you can store it, you can manage your own copies of it. And as I go through these, I want you to think about how this is a distinct contrast to what you may be used to in terms of your experiences with your traditionally copyrighted materials. To reuse it means that you can use it in a wide range of ways, not just in your classroom or in a study group. You can put it on a website. You can use it in a video. You can do whatever you want to do with it, basically, so long as you are crediting that creator. To revise it means that you can take that original content and alter it, adjust it, or adapt it. One of the most common use cases in education is that you receive OER content or you find something that is really suitable from a concept standpoint, but it doesn't suit your audience. So the most common use here is that people will take OER and then they will revise it to use examples or case studies that suit the populations that they're instructing and the specific courses that they're teaching. To remix it, and this is kind of the magic too, means that you can take multiple openly licensed materials and fit them together to where they fit your learning outcome. And then to redistribute it up in the upper right-hand corner means you can share it as much as you want, with whomever you want, whenever you want to do it. That's what makes OER different. And in fact, because you can do all of these things, That then translates to the ability to do more in the classroom pedagogically using this material, not having to just have your students reference the material and then building all of your other things separately from your textbook. You can use this material and build upon it. There's an entire body of research basically dedicated to open-enabled pedagogy that talks about all of these different things that you can do because of these 5R permissions. It's very exciting, and it's really grown in the past 5 to 7 years as a result of all the work that's been done over the past few decades. So just to put it in perspective, we're talking today about OER and using these openly licensed materials to solve our problems when it comes to inequities of course materials and epistemological equity. But OER and Creative Commons materials are all around us. So in the music industry, people are using OER or Creative Commons licenses to not only gain additional exposure by sharing their work, but also to create new work that builds off of and incorporates the works of others. Under United States copyright law, actually, works created by the federal government and its agencies can't be copyrighted. So you see that image of the center of Gene Cernan on the moon in '72. This is one of many images that NASA has made available as part of its mission. It's open. Same thing for the Met, for the Smithsonian. They've all released high quality images that are openly licensed that we as educators can incorporate. You can find openly licensed materials on YouTube as well. And then we have the open textbooks that we're talking about here today. So let me just walk through a few different places that I would go to if I were just starting my search for OER, understanding that the key is your learning outcomes. Every course has a scope and sequence. Every course has learning outcomes. All of the OER textbooks that you're going to find, or most of them anyway, are also aligned to learning outcomes. And so it will be very easy to kind of cherry pick what you need. Here's where I would go first is actually the Creative Commons website. And we will be sharing these slides, by the way, and each of these slides are images that directly link out to these resources. The Creative Commons General Directory has a lot of different searches from Google to open textbooks, and I would visit this site first, knowing that if you are teaching in a general education course area, thank God, there's high quality OER that's been developed, vetted, and reiterated for, again, about the past decade. Another great resource is OER Commons. This is a global William and Flora Hewlett Foundation initiative, and they don't only have things from K through 16, but they also have a lot of career and technical education resources as well. So this would be one of my first stops. OpenStax, you've probably heard of. They provide great options. They undergo a rigorous peer review process. So the things that you see on the OpenStax website have been vetted and are of substantial quality. Great options for all of your lower division courses. In fact, the Natural Science Department at Walter State Community College is using a lot of these OpenStax materials as the basis of having transitioned their OER courses. Frankly, they're a great model to look at because over the past 6 years, they have taken their courses from traditionally copyrighted textbooks at about the dollar price of $150 plus per course because it's the sciences to nothing. So they were first movers in this movement and they've done some great work. Lumen Learning actually began as a Gates Foundation startup, and they also have several courses that undergo rigorous peer review. Kind of a testament to this idea of remixing OER and revising is that Lumen and OpenStax are passing the materials back and forth because they're openly licensed. So Lumen will create something, OpenStax will ingest it into their system, they'll iterate and improve upon it, and then it goes back and forth. So between the two of these, both of them are very highly regarded resources. And here in Tennessee, I think Modelo State Community College, last I heard, the economics course, we're using Lumen materials. There are Tennessee eCampus courses ranging from psychology to introduction to business that have also used Lumen materials. So these are known and these are out there. Another misconception about OER is that there's nothing for the quantitative disciplines. So enter MyOpenMath. This system, an open source software system, was developed by a math professor in Washington State in 2005. And so basically they have pre-built courses at this point, from pre-algebra all the way to business calculus and contemporary calculus, that pair open textbooks with algorithmically generated, auto-feedback, auto-graded questions that return with the LMS system. So it's spectacular. I mean, at this point, they've even got an arrangement with, I think it's a opentextbookstore.com, where students can get printed copies of these open textbooks. So some of the members within the math department at Mississippi State have used this tool to convert several of their courses across the lower division math sequence, and they've done a spectacular job as well. So MyOpenMath. They even have chemistry courses available through MyOpenMath. One quick thing out of California, Merlot is funded by the California State University system. There are a lot of materials on here, but I'm pulling this up here right now to show you this peer review and user rating system. Many things that are published through Minnesota's Open Textbook Network, through Merlot, they undergo these types of peer reviews. So that said, I want to say that no differently with our traditionally copyrighted materials, the end reviewer and the end vetter is you in the classroom. I know that none of us, even though it might have a stamp of a publisher on it, are going to just accept it and bring it into the classroom as if it's good as gold. We review everything. So we have markers of quality on from several of these companies, but people who are using OER are putting it through the same review processes with their colleagues before it goes into the classroom. For our friends at TCAT, hello out there. Skillscommons.org is a great free and open online library out of the U.S. Department of Labor. So lots of career and technical education materials on Skills Commons. So before I pass it over to Dr. Collier, let me just ask, so how do we all rise? We all rise by saving our students an average of $116 per course if we ask them to pay anything for their materials at all, because they've already paid the tuition to be sitting in those seats. We all rise by giving our students access to the materials before, during, and after our course, for whatever reason it might be. We also rise by not putting our students in a situation where they're more likely to drop courses or avoid courses altogether or take fewer courses. Research has consistently shown that students perform just as well, if not better, because they have access to the materials in courses where OER is in use, as opposed to courses with traditionally copywritten materials. And frankly, on the faculty side, we all rise when we have the ability to tailor our content, when we have the academic freedom to modify, add, and revise as we see fit to suit our learning outcomes and the experience that we want to give our students in our classrooms. We all rise when we have the ability to engage in teaching and learning practices that aren't restricted, when we can copy and paste our textbook material and use it however we want. So I'm excited now to transition this to Dr. Lauren Collier, our Director of Academic Affairs at THEC and the leader of Tennessee's Textbook Affordability Task Force, to learn more about what's happening here in the state. Thank you, Dr. Collier.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone. Much like campus shared governance, our state collaborative approach to textbook affordability is layered. Elizabeth has just brought forward the faculty perspective largely, and it is the faculty role to adapt, adopt, and create course materials. The next layer to that is our campuses and systems, who support those faculty through library services, teaching and learning centers, training and technical assistance, and through accessibility offices. And then stepping back, yet another layer is the state perspective, in this case, THEC. And it is THEC's role to coordinate expertise and resources and to leverage that for the whole. First and foremost, at the state level, we have quite literally an investment in student success in the form of student financial aid. Student success rates in terms of completion are on the rise across the state. However, I think we can all agree that 1 in 4 community college student completion rate is not where we want to be, nor is the public university average, just over 60%, something that we're comfortable just accepting. You may notice that for me, I am saying textbook affordability and not OER or open educational resources. That's intentional. We at the state level recognize and want to honor that campuses and faculty need to make specific choices about specific courses and specific programs. OER has a great track record, especially in general education courses, but we recognize that there are some programs, especially very technical or niche programs, that may not be the best option for faculty and for students. I have heard EMT as an example of this because it is so dependent on multimedia and simulations that may be better offered through published materials. So the state perspective on that is to empower faculty and campuses to make the choices that provide the best learning opportunities for students. So in 2018, the state really ventured into textbook affordability by partnering with TBR for the first grant, which has become known as the Digital Engagement Initiative. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that, and Dr. Jen is going to talk a little bit more about that. After that pilot program, in the summer of 2019, we convened a textbook affordability forum. At that time, we had close to 100 people who gathered to talk about kind of what this needed to look like at the state level. We reviewed at that point the outcomes from the first iteration of the Digital Engagement Initiative. We put together an overview of OER, and then that group engaged in discussions about what should happen next. And one of the biggest outcomes of that is that we thought we needed to convene a task force. The Textbook Affordability Task Force convened this spring for the first time. And with that, the steering committee identified 5 focus areas. The first is accessibility, recognizing that any solutions that would come out of this group would have accessibility as a foundation. The second, faculty awareness and development. Finding, vetting, and developing support for faculty, and also acknowledging that we have a range of experience levels across our faculty, from literal beginners, folks that are just learning what OER stands for, to we have faculty who have created entire textbooks that are open and accessible. So we wanted to be mindful of that. The third piece, marketing and sustainability. We need a website. We need materials that support conversations with administrators, with legislators, with the public, and with students. And we need a communication strategy, a way to engage folks from across the state. The fourth group is a state benchmarking group to research best practices, models, what are other states doing, and what seems to be working well. How are they funding efforts? What are they doing to sustain those? And then finally, a group focused on development. What are models and what are ways that we can fund this initiative? Maybe it's cost sharing, maybe it's state appropriations, and maybe it is pursuing grant or foundation dollars. So I'm very pleased to say that this group is truly a working group. To date, we have achieved many of the things that we set out to do back in March, which given the timing of 2020 and its general craziness, I think is pretty laudable. We have created and launched a website. You can see it pictured here. That's part of the THEC site. We have a textbook affordability listserv that is open, and it is open to public institutions certainly, but really any educators in the state who would like to participate. At this point, most of that is around OER opportunities, training, and the like. The group has benchmarked state and national best practices. We have quite literally a spreadsheet that shows what other states are doing, how it's funded, who's participating, a range of options. We've identified metrics. We all know that what gets tracked or measured is what gets done. And so it was important for us to think through what is available and close to universal across our campuses, knowing that we have different data systems, that we have different bookstore contracts, wanting to identify a way that we can track our progress. And finally, we have developed a range of effective practices and strategies for OER. And I want to acknowledge that as we are keeping a big tent around textbook affordability, we also recognize that it is the work of this collective task force and really our best contribution when we're talking about cost saving and about quality course materials is through OER. And that's where we've invested our efforts today. So where do we go from here? We have moved into promoting and actually sharing faculty development pieces. Just at the end of September, we held an Intro to OER webinar. That recording is available on the website as well. We have been benchmarking data. So as Elizabeth talked about the research coming out of TBR related to student experiences of textbooks, that survey has been adapted for universities to employ. The University of Memphis has already deployed that and has data, and we hope that our other university partners will do that as well, so that we have some baselines of data. I will tell you, our phase 2 website, and we like to dream big, includes a dashboard that shows our progress in cost savings and also student success metrics. And we are pursuing funding generally for shared infrastructure. One of the biggest recommendations to come out of the state benchmarking group is that we need a Tennessee repository to serve as a front door, as a common collection place for all of the materials that are adapted and adopted and created in Tennessee for use across the board. So for many of you, this, depending on where you are on the OER and textbook affordability spectrum, we hope that you will be advocates on your campus. If you have materials that you're willing to share, we would love to hear from you. And if you have materials that you need, we're happy to share. And if we don't have them, we will create them. So we hope that you will join the broader textbook affordability community. And with that, I will pass to Dr. Robert Den. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. So what has the College System of Tennessee been up to? Where are we going next? The TBR's DEI, the Digital Engagement Initiative, was conceived in the spring of 2018, developed that fall, and piloted in spring 2019. And coincidentally, Dr. Collier and I had the opportunity to present the DEI concept and announce its launch during a presentation at this very same We All Rise conference 2 years ago. So very exciting. We began with 14 high enrollment courses and programs at the community and technical colleges. And we employed the inclusive access delivery model, whereby all students are automatically, they get immediate access to the digital textbook upon registration for the course. And we selected that delivery to start because it allowed us to maximize the impact and start quickly to scale it system-wide. Well, the project included on-ground faculty seminars back in the day when we could breathe the same air. In October 2018, before the launch, and March 19, during the operational stage, over 150 plus faculty and administrators shared effective practices. We engaged in peer panels and heard from one faculty who made the change from print to digital textbooks. And the photo you see here is from one of those faculty seminars. And participation in DEI pilot was completely voluntary, voluntary for the colleges, voluntary for the faculty, and faculty were not required, nor will they ever be required to change the textbook or any materials that they've been using in their courses. And participating faculty included all teaching modalities, on-ground, hybrid, online, at all levels of experience using digital materials. And in the first full year of implementation after the scale-up, DEI saved students $10 million system-wide in textbook costs, $10 million. Now it's time for phase two. The transition to open educational resource supported courses. And to that end, TBR recently issued the OER Grant Program, which provides opportunities for teams of faculty and professional staff to transform their general education program courses and sequences, currently using commercially published textbooks, to courses using OER. Our mission is to improve support and learning outcomes for all students, with the intentional focus on improving access and success for students of color, first-generation college students, and economically disadvantaged students. Now, the OER grant is making awards of up to $30,000 for teams of faculty within a discipline, department, or division across or within campuses. And we have aspirations for robust participation and collaboration, including student affairs, advising, librarians, of course, registrars, demonstrating a campus cultural shift to using OER. Now, the grant, we're just coming down to the deadline for when we should make those announcements. You'll probably hear that in some kind of press release. Some of your campuses and colleagues may have already been notified that they have received their OER grant award. So the shift to OER is not exclusive to higher ed. We're working with the Department of Education to leverage OER textbooks as part of the statewide dual credit program. Now, as a refresher, SDC is an opportunity for high school students to take courses designed and developed by college professors taught by the highly qualified high school teachers. And if a student passes a college faculty created exam at the end of the course, he or she can earn credit at any of our public colleges, universities in Tennessee. Now, the faculty work groups for each of the courses listed here are selecting an OER text for the 25,000 students who will be taking statewide dual credit courses next year. And now the gold standard. What if students could earn their entire degree with a zero textbook cost? Modelo State, believe it or not, has already done it. They offer an Associate of Applied Science degree in business, where all courses in the degree program use OER. Now, you may be familiar with Achieving the Dream, the network of community colleges with the focus on equity and data-driven decision-making. All TBR community colleges are members of this network, and just last week, the TCATs had their ATD kickoff, developing strategies to more effectively serve all students. In 2016, ATD partnered with SRI, Lumen, Gates, and the Hewlett Foundation to create OER degrees. And you can see the specifications on the slide. 38 colleges participated. Now, who knows what this is? I'll give you a hint. The T logo in the front does not stand for textbook. This is the newest model zero emission car by Tesla. And check out some of the features. Let me tell you some of the features of this newest model. It gets 520 miles of range on one charge. It has a 200 mile per hour top speed, and it's the quickest 0 to 60 and a quarter mile acceleration of any production car ever. So it will launch you from 0 to 60 in fewer than 2 seconds. Now, I've always been a pickup truck kind of guy, and I've owned a massive Ford F-350 with a 7.3 Power Stroke turbo diesel engine, and now I have an F-150 with a 3.5 gas turbo direct injection engine. And when electric and hybrid trucks came out several years ago, I told myself I will never go electric, as they just don't have the towing and payload capacity that combustion engines have. Well, after seeing this new technology coming out in the 2021 models, I may be ready to make the flip, the electric switch, if you will. So as a faculty member, you may be thinking, this is all very nice, but we need good leadership, policy, and infrastructure to support the OER pedagogy. Well, it's funny you should be thinking that, because the city of Tel Aviv is working on creating wireless electric roads to charge and power transportation in the city. Electric infrastructure under the road will charge specially equipped buses. And the system consists of like a set of copper coils that are placed under the asphalt. So where am I going with all this? Energy is transferred from the electricity grid in the road and manages communication with the approaching vehicles. Now we'll talk more about electric roads on the next slide after this one. One more question to ponder. Do you think widespread OER degrees are inevitable? For more information on that, I challenge you to Google California governor signs order banning sales of new gasoline cars by 2035. Now, I asked this question at the beginning of the presentation. How do we all rise with OER? Now, I'm not going to follow up with answers, but with more specific questions. How much more engaging will discussions be if all students have done the reading? How much more enriching will team projects be if all students have the same access to materials? How much more dynamic will classroom learning experiences be if all resources support all students? How much stronger will faculty communities become if OER materials are collaboratively developed? And how will quality of content improve if faculty have greater control of the breadth, depth, and relevance of the materials in their courses? How will department, division, and college success be affected if materials are optimally aligned with student learning outcomes? So let us now bridge from those rhetorical questions to our more practical discussion. I'm sure that you have many questions for the experts on this panel, which are Lauren and Elizabeth. And so I'd like to hear some of your thoughts in the time that we have left. I believe we have 12 minutes. So if you have questions, if you'll enter them in the chat, and then Lauren will speak them aloud and we'll try and answer some of them. Lauren, do we have any questions coming through?
Not as of yet. I do know that this broadcast has a short delay, so I was going to see if folks can catch up to us, but I got my eyes on it.
We also know that several in the audience are engaged in OER initiatives currently. So there are a number of questions up on the slide right now. Whether you are or are not engaged on your course or department or even institutional level, we would love to hear some of your thoughts and experiences with either successes or challenges, or what resources you feel that we should be pursuing on the state level to help pave the way for you to make this possible on your own campus.
Robert, you may know the answer to this. There's the question of availability of our presentation. Is that going to be made available through from TBR? Can you advise?
Yes, through the conference organizers will be sharing all the materials, and of course you can always contact any of the three of us because as our content as alludes to, all of our presentation materials are open educational resources. So.
And we hope with that you will join the listserv as well so that you can stay up to date. Those things that are promoted there are certainly things that are developed here in Tennessee, but also links and the ability to kind of keep up with things that are high quality, that are promoted elsewhere. Here's a question about challenges with bookstores and students opting in and out of DEI. Dr. Den, can you speak to that?
Well, I would need a more specific question.
It appears that maybe, have there been some improvements for student communications or management of that?
Yes, since the pilot, of course, when you pilot something, the purpose of the pilot is to find out, where are the speed bumps? And since that first year, we have worked with Follett, which is our bookstore partner on the IA delivery model. And in order to improve the communication and getting the culture, the student and campus culture, used to the process. It's just like when we moved back in the olden days, at least when I was an undergraduate, where you had to walk around with your little card to get it signed in the big gymnasium so you could take the courses. And then everybody moved. First, it was to phone, and you punched in your CRNs on your phone, and now it's all online. Well, when we moved to using that technology, there are always that paradigm shift problems that you have, but we have been working to improve communication. As a matter of fact, we just got the newest report for the fall 2020 courses, and we have fewer and fewer students having those issues with opting out and opting in. And of course, the campuses can always contact their bookstore operators to help them with that, their bookstore representative.
Elizabeth, you may be able to speak to this. There's some interest in Merlot, and I know that Tennessee has had a state membership. Can you talk a little bit about access to or partnership with Merlot?
Yeah, absolutely. Predicating this with that, I'm not exactly sure of the ins and outs of any previous relationship or contract that Tennessee/TBR/any of these institutions might have had with Merlot. I do know that Merlot is a California homegrown institute, and there are specific institutions within Tennessee, Tennessee State University being key amongst them, that are partners with Merlot. As part of that, Merlot offers training and OER webinars, much of the same nature that we are cultivating here within our own state. And Merlot also offers a repository. So I think one of the things that we're exploring as part of the task force is how can we create a similar system that is ours, so to speak, a Tennessee branded, and something that makes it easier for Tennessee educators to be connected with each other, regardless of which institution they're at. So that said, again, Merlot has been around for maybe, I don't know, I'm going to misspeak here. They've been around for many years, and they offer a lot of different collections. One of my challenges with Merlot is that if you are just starting out and looking for OER and you're teaching a general education course, in my mind, you want to see the whole shebang. You want to see, well, what full textbooks are out there. And while Merlot does have links to different textbooks, they also have more individual resources. And so for someone looking to just easily kind of flip that switch, I'll be honest, that's not exactly the first place that I would go. That said, it depends on what an institution needs. And if you're looking for a partnership and for that training, Merlot does offer several opportunities. And I know that it is either, I believe it's Modelo State Community College. They have a little hub there where at least for a year or two, they were storing their materials, maybe even now currently. And again, Tennessee State University is heavily involved and very happy with the experience that they've had with Merlot. I think if you are interested in, who is that? It was Sally. Sally, if you're knowledgeable about this, I think we would love to have a conversation about the things that you really love and how those might translate into something as we're taking these next steps and moving forward as a state here in Tennessee. And on that, Lauren, we did have a question come through about the OER Grant Program. I believe, Dr. Den, it's closed. The deadline is closed. Can you talk through maybe when those recipients will be announced, and are there plans for having this again in the future?
Yes. Yes to all of those questions. So there were about 15 recipients. Some have been already notified. The deadline for us to notify all of them is the 8th, day after tomorrow. After they've all been notified, all of the team leads, the faculty team leads, we will be doing a press release, of course, announcing it in all channels. And then, yes, we do plan, with funding available, we do plan to continue this next year's cycle toward this, because our goal is very aspirational, that all faculty and campuses who want to participate and move toward the OER zero textbook cost degree will be able to offer that to all of their students. So to answer my own question, whether we think that this is inevitable, just like the electric vehicles, I think that it is. And it just is a matter of who wants to be early adopters and who wants to be out there helping their students first.
Well, I thank you all for your time. It doesn't look like we have any additional questions coming in, but we are all very committed to this and to your efforts in helping sustain the OER and the textbook affordability movement for Tennessee students. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. I will tell you, I am the gateway to the listserv. So if you shoot me an email, I will happily add you to that and you can stay in the loop moving forward. With that.
And Lauren, if you don't mind, in the 1 minute we have left, I would like to close with another quotation from the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, if you don't mind. So this is from page 195 from that same historical fictional novel. And I have to note that Queenie, who's referenced in this passage, is a Black woman in 1936 rural Kentucky. Okay, from page 195. Queenie pulled back to her job. I aim to get myself a librarian degree. A degree, I said in awe. I've dreamed of opportunity forever, she said. To think how important it is for one to have chances over everything. They give body life. And that's how I'd like to end our presentation. If Lauren, Elizabeth, do you have anything else to add? Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.